Hey, Shawn, guess what? I now have the best news in the entire world.
What's the best news in the world, Richard?
The best news in the whole world is that we have found a new home on the internet.
A new home on the internet? Where's that?
That's right. You can now find the language of bromance on the Pod Bros Network.
The Pod Bros Network. We're bringing the bromance to the Pod Bros.
Yeah, see, it's a bro and a bro. It's like bro. It's a bromance with bros,
Podcast bromance
but not in a weird way.
in a fun way.
In a fun way.
In a bro way?
Yes. Because how can you not love Network with other great shows like Dave's Nerd Compendium, Pencil and Ink Reviews, and The Accidental Wrestling Fan?
And they also have Players versus Podcast and the Guy Huddle. What's not to love?
Right? It's a bro union that couldn't help but need us.
So check us out on all of our avenues, and then check us out now on Pod Bros Podcast Network.
Like we always say, the best thing with geeks is camaraderie, and it's great to come by brothers in arms. Bros on Pod Bros. What's up, everybody? I'm Richard.
And I'm Shawn.
And we're speaking the language of bromance. And if you didn't know this, I am a learned scholar.
A scholar.
I'm a learned scholar.
You were the wizard, right? From your survey you took a while back?
Right. I am. So I just finished this book, which I will say it's kind of sad that, like, you know, we have to celebrate. Like, this is the attention span of us these days is like, hey, I finished a book. Like, I committed to something for, more than 30 pages.
Look at me, pat me on the back.
Go me.
So I imagine you sitting there with like a graduation cap and a gown, maybe like the spectacle thing, the one glass.
No,
No?
Whenever I read, I tend to wear my smoking jacket in the study with my pipe.
This week on Language of Bromance discusses books from the past.
Right. That's me. And like, I'm like, oh, hello, I didn't see you there. Like, close a book, but like it's open to like the first page,
and you just throw it to the side, like, hey, I'll read that later.
Yeah, procrastination. she's a sly mistress. No, I just finished this book. It's an old, well, not old book, but it's an older book. It's Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. And this got me thinking that the book is basically about it's kind of an autobiography on his part, but it also kind of gives you like that peek behind the curtain on what goes on in his case, like, restaurant kitchens in Manhattan. But I think it shows what goes on in restaurant kitchens across the nation.
So is he like a cook, or did he run like the full restaurant, like the front and back? Or
He was head chef at a lot of different places. The Rainbow Room, which was in which is the restaurant in Rockefeller Center, caters to a lot of people. He last chef's job he had before these books started taking off was he was the executive chef at Le Hal, which had restaurants in New York, Miami, DC, and Tokyo. So he was like executive chef, and they kind of he talks about going to Tokyo. They bounced him over there to do some like consulting work and stuff like that. But he's worked in most of his work was in Manhattan, and it's just basically it's basically about like the crazy, insane shit that goes on in a restaurant kitchen that most people don't know about.
And so like the restaurants he's working at, those are probably like $100 plates, or are they?
They're I mean, it's higher end, but it's it's higher end, but that's also, it's Manhattan and that Manhattan restaurant scene.
Okay.
So at one point he does become he's head chef of his kind of not really his own place, but he has a lot more control over this one place and hires a bunch of guys that he used to work with, and like the crazy shit that they do. Like, they used to like slather like they made sure all their chef's jackets were like slathered in blood and
like meat blood from the steaks and stuff,
yeah,
or
yeah.
okay.
Or if there was if somebody cut themselves, then they made sure to like, properly like christen their clothes and
All right.
like, create like most of their exploits are, drug fueled and alcohol fueled and
So this is like the rock star life of kitchen careers and
it is
all that kind of stuff.
it
Okay.
is it and I mean it doesn't I would say it doesn't really glamorize. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It does in the sense that, like, I mean, you look back, because like the stories that he tells about, different things that go on in a restaurant kitchen, like, I can relate.
Yeah.
I've worked in a kitchen since I was 15 years old. I'll give you an example. He used to, when he was a kid, he worked as a dishwasher in in like a seafood place. It was like a seafood kind of bistro.
And if
And
nobody's done dishes before, that is probably one of the grossest jobs ever.
it can be. It can be.
Well, the grossest part about that I remember, I don't know if all restaurants are like this, but I know the place we worked, and it's probably safe to talk about this because it's shut down, but the person doing the dishes, so they're the ones cleaning off these gross half-eaten plates and spraying soap all over the place, was the same person that cooked the pizzas.
Oh, yes.
And I remember, like, when I only did it a handful of times because it's nice because you got tipped out and you got, like, minimum wage or a little bit above minimum wage.
Yeah, it was minimum wage.
I remember the first time I did that, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you need to cook the pizzas too." And I'm like, my hands are disgusting looking. I'm like, my hands are gross. Like, shouldn't somebody else take care of this? Like, no, it's the dishwasher's job. It's like, all right, let's
get on it.
Cook some pizzas.
So he's working in a dishwasher in this kitchen, and he does summers there, and he gets moved up to working on salads. So he's making salads and stuff like that, and during this particular night, they're hosting a wedding party. So the bride and groom are there, and like the bride, and groom, they kind of like walk through the kitchen, and the chef, kind of gives them a tour, stuff like that. And so the wedding party's going on. Now this bride is like in her wedding dress, like she's like walking around and talking to the chef and stuff like that. In the kitchen in her wedding dress, like in her wedding whites.
Yeah. Nice.
So at one point she's talking to the chef, and he looks at Anthony and says, "Tony, I need you to watch the broiler. I'll be right back." Now for him, he's like, "Holy shit, I get to work the broiler." Like, okay, for people that like usually in a restaurant, like your broiler guy, that's your top dog.
That's the rock star.
That's yeah. If you're rocking broiler and it's like a weekend night, like your broiler guy, like that's your fucking ace in the hole. Like he's your rock star. He's your number
Walks
one.
in with the golden flippers.
So he's thinking like, holy shit, yeah. So Anthony's thinking like, holy shit, I get to work the broiler. Like I'm gonna fucking like rock this thing. So he's up there and he's fucking, cooking up steaks and shit like that. Chef's gone, and he's wondering, like, what the, where is this guy? Like, I know he asked me to watch this, and I'm grateful, that I get to, but where is he? He goes to the back door, looks out the back door, and over by the garbage cans, like the dumpster and stuff like that, there is this bride with her hands on a one of those big 55-gallon trash cans, bent over in her wedding whites, getting rammed from behind by the head chef.
Nice. Where's the husband in all this?
He's still, sitting there like in the dining room with his family and probably her family, like all sitting and eating and, enjoying themselves. Meanwhile, the wife, the recent bride, is in the back, bent over a trash can, getting nailed by the chef.
So I just imagine the mother-in-law like looking. I was like, so Tony, where's Cynthia at? Where's Cynthia? It's like, I don't know. I think she said something about wanting to get some tube steaks somewhere. But I'm not sure. Let me go check.
But he even says, he's like, in this moment, this is when I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. This is exactly where I want to be. I want to be in a kitchen in some capacity until I die.
So did they ever explain like how that worked out? Like how he talked the bride into giving it up?
Who knows? Does it matter?
I don't know. I think that's a story I'd like to investigate because it seems odd for a bride to go back in the kitchen with her husband out in front and just to make that work out. Like I want to know how that worked. Like if they knew each other or if he's like, hey, watch me flip these burgers. And that got her going.
So yeah, so I it was a great book. It was, I like there were parts in it that I laughed because I related. It really captured what it's like to work in a kitchen with a bunch of people. He says that, the kitchen is reserved people that cooks and chefs, it's not a life for everybody. It's usually reserved for the transients, gypsies, tramps, and thieves.
Yeah.
That's your employment pool. And it's true. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go, kitchens everywhere are like this. I mean, that's what you get. You get, ex-cons or, immigrants,
future ex-cons.
or ex-cons or future ex-cons. A lot of, I mean, it's an immigrant population, especially in a place like Manhattan. Like, you go to like an Italian bistro, I'm telling you right now, that kitchen is full of fucking Mexicans. It just is.
Yeah, I remember that's where we met is at a sports bar. It was just like a pub and grill kind of thing. And I always remember there being like this big divide between like the front and the back. Like the kitchen people hated the servers hated the kitchen people. And I mean, I tried to get along with everybody, and I don't know how long it was before you actually like kind of accepted me, but it seemed like everybody back there, accepted me as kind of one of their own.
I think it's because at one point you started working some kitchen shifts.
Yeah, I
like
did.
That's
expo
all.
a lot,
That's
yeah.
all you need. That's all you need to do. Just work back there, and then it's like, okay, all right, this motherfucker knows the struggle.
I remember one of the best parts. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I think I messed up an order. Like I rung in the wrong thing or something like that. I came back and let the guy know. I was like, hey, I'm not supposed to have cheese on this or something like that. And the guy's like, well, what's it matter? You're going to tell them we fucked it up anyway. And I was like, no. If I fuck up, I tell them I fuck up. If you guys mess up, I tell them you messed up. I keep it real. And he kind of shook his head, and I remember you kind of stamped like, no, yeah, that's what Shawn does. He'll accept his mistakes.
Yeah. Aw. It was a sweet, tender moment.
It was. I think we locked eyes, and I think I cried a little.
A little. Inside.
No, I ran around back and hugged you. That was always my favorite part, was to sneak back there with you guys and just kind of hang out.
Like I said, I've been working in a kitchen for, since I was 15 years old. And, I mean, I've seen crazy shit. I've done crazy shit. But it really is... I think that, like, from that experience, I really have not been able to adjust into, like, a normal working world.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I could function in, like, an office setting simply because I'm partial to making dick jokes and, and being very, like, boisterous and loud and fucking... And I don't think it would go over in a team building meeting. I mean, like, we had team building meetings when we worked in a kitchen. It was you get off at fucking midnight and you hit the bar and drink until 2 or 3 in the morning.
Sometimes you pay for the liquor, sometimes you don't, depending.
Right. I'm trying to, like, I could give you tons of stories. I mean, smoking weed in the freezer to people having sex in coolers. or offices or in the or on the bar when the place closed or um I mean people just people just like I there was this one place I worked where like there were these two guys that would just like back their car up to the back door, and then like that was their grocery shopping. They
Oh,
just went
nice.
through and just grabbed shit and threw it in the fucking trunk and off they drove. Like and like all those things, like all these things that were like that in a lot of places would be grounds for not only dismissal but probably criminal charges being filed. It seemed like not only acceptable but almost fucking par for the course.
Well, it's like that lettuce is going to turn in a couple days, so why not take it?
Yeah, I mean, and oh yeah, they're smoking weed in the freezer. That's at least they're not doing it on the line. At least they're not doing it over your food. But it makes me wonder how many people that they're out in the dining room, sitting down, having a meal. How many of them actually have an inkling on what goes on behind those fucking swinging doors?
I imagine a majority of people, especially the ones that have never worked that kind of job, probably think of it as kind of like this magical land where everybody's putting in 110% to make you the best meal ever. When in reality, they're just trying to get shit out the door and make it till midnight.
Right. So we can fucking knock off and get stupid drunk and do it all over again.
Yeah, no, I only worked about 3.5, 4 years in a restaurant. I know the first like 2 or 3 years we worked together, like we had a really good owner, really good manager, and like it went really well. But then some people stepped in and it kind of sucked for a bit.
It did,
and that's about the time I quit. So, and that's the only place I ever worked at with you was there.
Okay, so were there? I mean, are there any like insane, crazy fucking stories that I don't know about that you know about?
Oh, not really. I mean, I didn't really get to see a lot of that stuff. I mean, a lot of the things that were awesome about working there, I kind of shared those experiences with you. Like some of my favorite things is we at the restaurant we worked at, it was in the mall, and it was right next to a bookstore. And so once a month, the bookstore would throw out old magazines and everything.
Yes.
And for about 6 months to a year, we did porn dumpster diving because they dump it all in this clean dumpster, and you jump over, and because they just tore the covers off.
Right.
You go through and like toss out like, okay, here's a couple good ones. Here's some good ones.
Yeah. This giant box full of fucking. There's this giant box full of like Penthouse magazine, and like the only thing that's missing is the front cover.
Yeah,
so they rip because they rip the front cover off so you can't resell it, and then they throw it all away. Well, as soon as that happened, fucking, it was me. I would do it. I jump in this dumpster and dig this box out, and then just proceed to start throwing porn at everybody.
How'd you figure out that's what it was? I just remember one day walking back like, we found a shitload of porn.
I don't know. I really don't know. I think it was because they would throw out books. They would throw out actual books.
Yeah, I remember them doing that.
And I was like, holy shit, like there's fucking like books in here. And I actually, I read a lot. I actually, a lot of some of the books I have, are missing the front cover because they were, like sci-fi fantasy, books like that. And, it was a way, it's a free book.
Yeah, like, I mean, if it's gonna get chucked
I'm not gonna
anyway.
I'm not gonna resell it. I mean, obviously, I want to read it. I'll, and a lot of books I read, and then, I, gave them away or put them up at a yard sale or something like that. But I think one day I was looking for, I was like, hey, let's see if they got any new books, and I was like, it's all magazines, and I'm flipping through. I'm like, holy shit, this is porn.
Imagine you open it up. It's like Pulp Fiction when they open up the suitcase. It's just like this shining light.
It was. That's how I felt. It felt like I was blessed by the gods. So I would, so, I'd walk around with this stack full of fucking porn mags and start throwing them to all my chefs. And then I'd, like, tear out the pictures. I remember one day I tore out a bunch of the pictures and plastered them all over the office.
I remember that.
So
Didn't you put some on the line?
Maybe.
Is that where most of them went?
If I remember, I just remember I put a shit ton, like, all over the office. Like, just taped them on the walls and the door and the computer. And I was like, this opening manager is going to have a fun time. But yeah, I mean, Smoking weed in the freezer. That was at the very first restaurant I ever worked at, which also closed. Um, that's that's one thing I will say about working. I mean, you hear that statistic about restaurants that like 1 in 5 close. I think it's like 1 in 5 close every year. Like 20% of your. I think it's higher.
Yeah, it's hard to make money in a restaurant.
It's so hard. It's so hard to make money, and it's so hard. I mean, I would say that. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Well, I think out of all the restaurants I've ever worked at, I think there's only maybe and I've been in 6 or 7. I think there's only one, maybe two that are still open.
Well, I think a lot of it, at least the one that we worked at, seemed like people kind of jumped in thinking they knew what to do, and I don't think they had a clue.
But you kind of run in, especially like it's the town that I lived in. That coupled with that type of industry, you meet a lot of the same people. I mean, I worked with the same people at like 2 or 3 different places. You just end up running into the same people.
Because it's just what they do. They find the next.
Yeah, some place closed and you go on. Everybody went to the next thing, or they found a better job, and they took. Like there were a lot of places that you quit and you go to the next job, and then they have an opening, so you call up the old place and you're like, hey, there's an opening, and this place is way better than that shithole that I just fucking left. Like, why don't you come over here?
Yeah. I remember, like, in that town that we're from, it's small enough that whenever something new opens up, for like the first 5 months, like especially as a server, you just make stupid money.
Oh my god!
I mean, like I started
so fucking busy.
I started like a month maybe after the place that we met opened up, and I mean, I was only there for like 4 hours a night, but I was making like $200 a night easy. Like,
oh yeah.
If I didn't walk out with $200 in cash, I was surprised. Like, it was just unheard of. And what's crazy is the people that started like right when it first opened, they were talking like they're making $300-400 a night, like just like clockwork.
Yeah, I remember that place in particular. I think my first paycheck had like 20 hours of overtime on it.
Oh wow!
Like I was working like 7. I was working like 7 in the morning till like 5 or 6, and that was 6 days a week. It was nuts. It was just fucking nuts.
So that's kind of so I mean, not to really bring it back to kind of an origin story, but I mean that's where we met. What brought you to that place?
Just it was an ad in the paper.
Okay.
I was working at one place, and I was just I mean, like you make money, and everything's okay, and you just chefs to me are a lot like mercenaries. You go where the fucking money is.
Yeah.
Every job that I took, I always made more at that job starting than I did at the place I left.
It's just kind of like you look at that you've got the experience, and then it's
Right.
They actually have the hours to give to people.
Right. You always traded up. I always traded up. I never took a step back.
Gotcha.
Every restaurant I worked at, I always started out making more than the place I was at. And so you just go, until you hit like, usually you kind of hit like a glass ceiling where, fucking they're not going to give you any more money, so that's when you start looking for the next thing.
Gotcha. So what's your most memorable memory of that place?
Of that place in particular? Yeah. I totally actually forgot about the porn thing. That actually kind of seemed kind of normal. There was one night I had to bail somebody out of jail, and I actually had to take money out of the safe to bail somebody out of jail.
I know this person, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know the story you're talking about.
I had to take money out of the safe to go bail somebody out of jail. I had a lot of people that were on. I was a manager. I was a kitchen manager there. There was a lot of people I had on work release. A lot of people that like, they came in and they wanted to work. Like, I'll work fucking 50 hours, and I'd schedule them like, I'd schedule them 12-hour shifts, because if they weren't working, then they were in fucking jail. They let them out, and then they they'd hightail it over to the store, and they'd put in a fucking 10-hour day because they as soon as it was over, then they'd have to head right back and check back in and crash out on a metal cot.
Uh, I've been in that place before. I haven't been in it, but like visited, and seems miserable. I would work 30 hours in a day, even though there's not, just so I would never have to go back there.
Exactly. And that's what they all did. And usually I would kind of fudge it, and like I would, I put down that, oh yeah, I'd let him punch out at like, 6:30, and then and then the jail would be like, oh yeah, he punched out at 8. Usually
Gotcha.
give him like an hour, because usually they'd end up all they'd say is, I just need. Usually they just like would run like home, like to their actual house, and like grab a shower and maybe a meal, and then before they headed back. But yeah, they put in like 12-hour days, because what the fuck else are they gonna do? It's either that or sit in jail and read a magazine.
And most of them were in there for like petty things too, wasn't it? Like DUIs and
Yeah,
things
it's
like
usually
that.
like DUIs or fucking like
Possession or something small.
yeah, something fucking stupid. But yeah, I mean, it was always easy to score drugs. It was always you always had there was always somebody in the kitchen that was dealing, like on the side, like that was their other job.
I'm always curious about this. Like, I mean, because I hung out with you, and I hung out with quite a few people that I don't know if you were doing anything at this point in time, but I know one of the managers were, and they all knew that I didn't.
Right.
And so, like, I never knew any of that was going on. So I always kind of felt like if I walked in the kitchen, like I'm Mr. like oblivious to it all.
Uh-huh.
And so I imagine you guys back, like, all right, let's see, I want a dime bag. And I walk in, I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? What's that in the bag? Some paprika? Woohoo! All right, well, I'm going to go check on my table. See
Why
you
are
in a
you guys
bit.
buying and selling oregano? This is stupid. You're in a kitchen. There's a whole thing of it right there.
Here, put a little on my plate. Sounds good.
All right. Bye, guys. Do.
It's like, what's wrong with that guy? It's like, he's all right. He's cool.
But I mean, yeah, I think it kind of amazes me that a lot of people don't realize that, like, in a kitchen, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. At least it was in my kitchens. It was fucking like you have a radio that you crank up, and then
the radio.
you have a radio that you fucking crank up, and like, people are, hanging out and fucking laughing and fucking around with each other and slapping each other with fucking snapping each other with towels, and like like beating the shit out of each other and burning themselves and cutting themselves and have like, sex in the walk-in. And
For that bit, that when it was really nice, like it was like a big club. Like we were in this fun club together, and like every night was fun. Like there was some nights that sucked, obviously, when you had bad customers or whatever, but for the most part it was a lot of fun.
and and I can say that experience is it's pretty much like every single other kitchen I worked in. And I'm sure it's like, kitchens across the nation. Like these are the people you work with, and you fucking crank out a shit ton of food, and then everybody hangs out and gets stupid fucking drunk.
Yep.
Like I had it was really strange for me to go to. I worked in a hospital for a while. I mean, it was still a kitchen, but it was such a culture shock for me, coming from, working in restaurants and stuff like that, to getting to this kind of environment, to that kind of environment where didn't make dick jokes all the time and things like that. And, a lot of the other people that worked there, like, had never worked in a restaurant, and so they seemed kind of like foreign to it. There was this kid that asked me one day. He was like, Richard, you worked in a lot of restaurants. I was like, yeah, quite a few. He's like, did you ever see that movie Waiting? And I said, yeah, I've seen it. He's like, is it really like that? I was like, and I looked at him dead in the face, and my expression completely dropped, and I'm like, it's exactly like that.
I remember,
That's
like, we were
exactly how it is.
right in our heyday when that movie came out. Because I think you and I went and saw a movie, and that trailer came on, and we both looked at each other like, we need to see that movie.
Everybody that worked in a restaurant was like, I need to see this movie.
Yeah, it's like that is exactly what it's like to work in a restaurant. Yeah, I remember like because the place we worked at, that was the first place I ever got like completely drunk, and I remember there was some girl that went in the bathroom and I followed her and I tried to like jump over to peek at her because she knew I was in there, and I
Oh,
hit my head on the railing. And so then her and I like she's like, let's army crawl. I'm like, all right, whatever. And so we army crawled underneath one of the booths, booth 46, and nothing happened, but we both just end up passing out. End up getting sick for the first time. So the manager at the time, he's like, you're not going to be able to drive, so let me take you to my place. I was like, all right. And so we get to his place, and he's like, listen. He was talking about this, is it Ben Harper or something Harper, some musician? He was talking about that guy like all night. He's like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. You lay here on the couch. I'm going to put this in, and we can watch this. I'll sit out here and watch it with you. I'm like, whatever, dude. I pass out on the couch, and for like the next like 6 hours, the intro music like on the menu played over in a loop for like 10. It was like a 10-second loop. So I just heard this over and over and over. It was awesome too because that girl like maybe a month or two later, I don't know if she called me or texted me, but she's like, "Hey Shawn, you remember that one night?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I remember." She's like, "Did we have sex?" I was like, "No, trust me, we did not have sex." There was nothing functioning on me. Trust me.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was fun. But I know her and I booth 46 was always our thing. But there's a lot of fun things that happened like with that. I remember there was a couple lesbians that worked in the back.
Yes.
I don't remember their names.
Yes.
The one girl was awesome. Like I always loved talking to her. And,
oh, I love my girls. Oh, they're awesome. They would constantly like they just like because the thing with a kitchen is, I mean, the people that you work with. I mean, honestly, the only analogy I can give is like it's like they're like war buddies.
Oh yeah.
Like that's the kind of like bond that you have with these people, that you form with these people. There were nights where like everybody's back there and everybody's cooking and a couple people are usually drunk, and these two girls like all of a sudden would start like just flashing their tits around.
Oh yeah.
Like, so I got like two lesbians running around in the back fucking lifting their shirts up, like flashing people. And like I'm sure there was probably some like wide-eyed fucking server that walked through those doors and like, what the fuck is going on back here?
I always tried to talk to one because her mom was a server. She was a little bit older, and her and I would always flirt all the time. And her daughter and I would always flirt a little bit. And I don't know if she was joking or not, but she always says if she was straight that she would go out with me, go on a date with me. And her mom was always like, you'd make a good son-in-law. That was great.
That's awesome. But yes, kitchen. I think it's something that everyone should do. I don't know how to function as a normal person in the world. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I've worked in a kitchen for so long that things that I think are socially acceptable apparently are not socially acceptable. It's socially unacceptable to make dick jokes at people and then assume that they don't feel harassed.
Yeah, I know I haven't worked in the kitchen for like 7 years, but like at least once a year, I have that like dream that I have way too many tables and I can't get to one. I still have those dreams. Trying to think if there's the only other story I remember is this one time we were staying late, and there's these two girls. Both they weren't lesbians; they're just hanging out. And all of a sudden they start talking, and the one's like, "I've never kissed a girl." The other one's like, "You've never kissed a girl?" Do you remember this?
Yes. Because I was sitting on the other side of the bar watching this, and then they started talking about their breasts, and then all of a sudden, like, they start like, no, your breasts are fine, and like they start touching each, like she's touching her breasts, and then the other girl's like, well, if you're touching mine, I'm gonna touch yours, and they start to, and I'm sitting there on the opposite side of the bar, I'm like, is this how porn starts?
I remember like your eyes were just huge. Of course, my girlfriend at the time was there, and I think she was like getting pissed off at this. So she's like, I gotta go. I'm like, oh, okay, bye. She's like, you want to walk me out? I'm like, damn it. And I walked away right as like, oh, well, and they started kissing. I just hear you like, does this really happen in real life?
Apparently it does. I didn't think it would. I thought it was something the porn made up, but apparently it actually happens. So there you go.
There's like a lot of those people that I haven't seen since then. It'd be awesome I would rather have a reunion of that time in my life than like a high school reunion.
I know. I mean, and the thing is that people that I met in those kitchens, I took with me to other places, or they, they would be like, "Man, I'm looking for a job." I'm like, I'm working at this place. Let me try and get you in. And like, I know there's at least a couple of people that I worked with in 3 different fucking kitchens. And you kind of form that bond, and there's a camaraderie, and that's also something that I don't see in other work settings, like an office or something like that. And
yeah, not for the most part. I mean, you might have people get referenced, but I wouldn't say it's anything like a kitchen or a restaurant in general.
Yeah.
Because I remember, our place started slowing down a little bit, and then a new restaurant opened like not even like 100 yards away.
Right.
And so, like, a lot of the servers started going over there because they knew they were going to make mad, stupid money for the first couple of months.
Right.
So it's getting cold out, and this is another story I remember, and I kind of want to talk about because I don't know if I ever heard what happened from this. And so you were closing, and I was closing. You were the manager at the time, I believe, and it was this like middle of January, like way below freezing. And we close up, we walk out, and I usually never brought my Coke, so I left it in my car because I didn't want to get it to smell like the restaurant.
Right.
And so you get in your car, because I think you already had it started. You say, hey, bye, Shawn. I'm like, okay, bye, Richard. You jump in, drive off. I try to unlock my car door, and I can't get it unlocked.
Oh, shit.
And so I'm like trying to fidget with it, trying to open it, and I'm like, fuck. I kind of like look for you and wave, but you're already gone. And I was like, shit, what do I do? So I ended up walking over to the McDonald's that was close by, which my aunt worked at. She let me in, and we ended up getting in and everything. But I thought I heard a story that my mom ended up calling and was upset. Did that actually happen?
I have no idea.
Okay. I was always worried about that because you and I were just starting to become friends. And, like, here I am, this 19-year-old kid.
And your mom called?
Yeah. I was worried my mom called.
Where's my Shawnee?
It's like, my Shawn was out in the cold. He might have pneumonia. I want to talk to the manager now. Mom.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that didn't happen?
No.
Okay,
I don't recall getting a call from an angry mom about her baby in the cold.
I just remember, so my dad ended up coming to help me out to try and figure out how to get this. I tried hot water and everything, but the car was so far away from everything I couldn't get to it. We eventually popped the trunk, and I crawled through the trunk of the car and got in that way.
Damn.
It was fun. Well, that's good. My mom didn't call and bitch you out. I'm glad about that.
So to sum it all up, if you've never worked in a restaurant before, behind those doors in the kitchen, you have a very savory group of people and there's a multitude of sex, drugs, and in the kitchens I worked in, because I usually had control of the radio, rock and roll. A lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. People smoking out back, smoking weed out back, smoking weed in the cooler. Sex in the kitchen on occasion. A lot of stolen food. Nobody I really thought of, I don't really recall anybody stealing the booze, because the booze was kind of under more lock and key.
I think for the first bit, it seemed like we kind of got away with it for a while, but then somebody started taking notice.
Yeah.
It kind of became, it's like, listen, if you buy liquor, we have to charge you for it, but draft beer, you can get away with that.
Right. I'm so glad this place is closed now.
Oh yeah. They kind of had a rough end there.
Otherwise, we would never air this episode. It's just something we would play to each other.
It's like, okay, Shawn and Richard, in the court of law. Like, no,
what's the statute of limitations on public indecency? Plastering corn all over the.
This is all made up. It's just a story. This really didn't happen.
It's all hypothetically, if we were to steal food and plaster porn all over an office.
Oh man, I love that place. So anyway, recently I went and saw a movie.
Ooh.
You might have heard of it. It's by the great Christopher Nolan, or at least he's self-proclaimed great. I think a lot of people call him great. He's
A
not
lot of people do
self-proclaimed.
call him great because you had the the Batman trilogy. Then you had after that you had Inception.
I haven't seen Inception. Seen the Batman trilogy. He had a Memento, which I liked.
Yeah.
But so there's four movies I was thinking about that I was very, very close to just getting up and walking out of. We all know Spider-Man 3. We've talked about that in depth.
Yes.
There was the Traveling Pants, the sister of the Traveling Pants.
What possessed you for this one? Was there a girl?
There was a girl.
Okay.
That's
all. That's all you need.
Yeah. We were just starting to hang out. The best thing about this is she's like, I really want to see this movie. And her cousin was a year or two younger than us. She was a little bit younger. So she's like, well, I was like, well, let's all three go. It's no big deal. I'll pay for everybody. And so we go, and like she was like absolutely in love with this movie. And her cousin and I kind of look at each other. It's like, this is fucking stupid.
Right.
I actually closed my eyes and took a nap during that movie. Like it just was terrible. There was P.S. I Love You. Went and saw that with a girl. Wanted to hang myself. It was terrible.
You know what? I might have to fight for that one a little bit. That movie actually wasn't terrible for me.
The problem I had with it is it's like this great, great love story, and like 4 weeks after her husband dies, she's banging one of his best friends. And the girl that I went with is like, no, he wants her to be happy. He loves her so much, he wants her to be happy. It's like, listen, if I die, at least wait 6 weeks before you start banging one of my best friends, please.
Just 6 weeks? That's your cutoff?
Well, I mean, at least. I mean, it's a little insensitive otherwise.
I thought the timeline was a bit longer than that. I thought it was.
It might have been, but I really feel like it was real tight. Like, it seemed like.
Plus, you're in another country. If you're in another country, it doesn't count.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're in another country and the husband's dead, so I'm saying it doesn't count. I don't know. It's. I mean, all I'm saying is that I didn't think P.S. I Love You was terrible. Although I will say it did really fucking set the bar for what you have to do even after you're dead as a man. Then you're like, shit, now I got to come up with a fucking scavenger hunt? So that way I'm a good husband? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, because my wife watched that movie and she's like, oh, that's so. I'm like, no, I got to do this shit. No, I got to come up with a fucking scavenger hunt for you after I die. So that way I'm a good fucking husband.
Well, all it is a condom in the address of your best friend, if he's not in another country or not.
Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, this is the problem with romantic comedies, is that it sets this fucking bar that now you, as the male significant other in a relationship, now you have to meet. You have to meet this bar, because if you don't, then you're an insensitive piece of shit. And so now I have to come up with this fucking like looky-loo after I die. Like, how am I? Like, what? And it has to be at the very least has to be as good as what fucking Gerard Butler comes up with.
Yep. That's a lot of work, too, especially if you're on your deathbed. Like, do you really want to be writing all these letters on your deathbed?
Plus, she has a total lady crush on, Gerard Butler.
Yeah. Your wife.
She totally crushes on Gerard Butler. I think it's because of 300 when he had the beard, you know?
I remember some girl was talking about him for some other movie. I was getting my hair cut. I couldn't picture who he was because I'm real bad with actors' names. And she's like, yeah, he's in such and such movie. And of course, I don't say 300. I say, oh, you mean P.S. I Love You? She's like, oh, that's cute. You know, like most guys would say 300, and you come with P.S. I Love You. Like, oh, do you want to go out sometime? She's like, oh, I thought you were
gay. No, but you're a great friend. Whoa.
And the other movie I really wanted to walk out on was the Pirates of the Caribbean. I went to a midnight release. And it was the one where they have the sword fight on the thing that's like rolling down the hill.
Oh, so that's the second one.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have 4 movies that I wanted to walk out on. I'm going to add a 5th movie to that.
Oh.
And that's going to be Interstellar.
Ouch.
It was Unstellar.
All right, all right.
It was not all right. So this is like this like supposed to be this massive like outer space movie, and maybe I missed something. Maybe there's some deeper meaning into it, but
Okay,
like,
I have actually not seen much on this movie, so what I need the synopsis. Like give me a picture, give me a trailer.
okay, so this is gonna be spoilery. So the idea is Earth is basically not able to sustain human life anymore,
As
or at least
well we know this.
and it still sustains it enough, but like there's a lot of crops that aren't like basically extinct. So the only thing that we can grow is corn. It's really dry. There's a lot of dust. So they need to find a way to make sure that the human life continues.
Okay.
NASA's been shut down, like so they're not even like training people to be anything but farmers because they ran out of food. Like there's really no more wars or anything because like everything just like everybody's trying to just survive off of the food they can create.
Right. The Earth is just trying to feed itself.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
NASA, like all this exploration stuff is like gone, and they actually have said that like the whole moon landing thing that was faked. Like that's what they're trying to teach in schools now.
They're trying to teach that the moon landing was faked?
Yeah, they said it was just like a great thing of propaganda. Like that's what the schools are teaching.
Okay.
I think it's just this big push. Like just worry about farming. That's all we can worry about to survive. There's no reason to look to the stars anymore.
Okay.
And Matthew McConaughey's character, like really smart, and like he was, they kind of said a point where he's like he was born either 40 years too early or 40 years too late.
All right.
So like he could have been somebody famous or not famous, but like really influential in the world, but he's born in this time where he couldn't be.
Okay.
So the idea is that they need to get off Earth and either repopulate. There's like two different plans. One is they can move people, or the other plan is that they have these fertilized eggs that they'll try and like slowly start bringing them together, like whenever they find a habitable planet.
All right. All right.
So they stumble upon NASA, him and his daughter, which is still existing because he was a fighter pilot or something.
Okay.
And this is where he learns all this stuff and yada, yada, yada. They want him to be part of the pilot because he's the only one that's ever flown. And they explain to him that there's this wormhole that they've sent people through, and they found like I think a dozen planets that are potentially habitable.
Oh.
So up to this point, I'm invested. I'm like, okay, this is cool.
All
and
right.
the way they found this like secret NASA place was somehow gravity had done something by binary showed them the coordinates of this NASA place.
Okay.
And they never really explained it, so I just kind of took it for face value, like something that place is doing is pulled these books off the shelf or something that created this binary code that they figured out, oh, okay, these are coordinates for this place. So I kind of give that kind of like, okay, it's kind of weird, but whatever. Up to this point, when he gets there and signs up, like it's a good movie. Everybody seems to be acting really well, and everybody seems like this plot makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the plot so far seems totally believable. Like I can totally I can totally buy this. Maybe not so much the lack of space exploration thing, like where the teaching about the moon landing and stuff like that, but I get the whole like Earth wanting to feed itself and everybody kind of like slowly developing into agriculture, like nothing but agriculture.
Yeah,
Because everybody just wants to not die.
yeah, because you have to eat. You need
Right.
you need to at least sustain what you can.
Okay.
And so there's a scientist who they keep talking like he's trying to figure out gravity. Like he's trying to figure out this algorithm for gravity, and they don't really say why. And so he's like, by the time you come back, I will have figured out this equation. It's like, okay, I still don't know why you need to figure out gravity, but okay. Like I assumed it was for spaceships or something.
Okay.
So they get in space. They're going to go to Mars first, and then they're going to go to the wormhole. And even up to this point, it all still makes sense, kind of. They go through the wormhole, and it takes them to these 3 different planets. It starts getting kind of weird, and I haven't figured out, maybe you can explain this, but some of these planets, like, time went faster. So there's this border where when they got past this border, for every hour, it was 7 hours, like normal time.
Well, I mean, yeah, it all has to do with like rotation and distance of the sun and stuff like that. It's like how like a day on Mars is way longer than a day on Earth.
Yeah, but that makes sense. But I mean,
But they're saying that time actually itself goes slower.
yeah. So
That might just be like distance to the center of the universe and things like that, because I mean They actually say that theoretically, if you were near, because they at the center of the universe is this massive fucking star,
Mm-hmm.
and they say that. I mean, it's all hypothetical. Obviously, it's all theoretical. But they say that if you're traveling at the speed of light near this gigantic star, that gravity coupled with your speed will slow time down for
Okay.
you as compared to the rest of the universe. So it might just be like distance to the center of the universe, which is why time goes slower.
Maybe, and they didn't really explain that real well. At least I mean, even then, it's like okay, there's some kind of unknown thing, but that makes sense. It's like okay, I can kind of buy this, even though it's kind of weird. Because to me, it's like if you're on Mars and I'm on Earth, if you come back in 6 months, we've both aged 6 months.
Okay.
Like I don't know, I can't really put it in my brain how that would physically change.
Right.
The relatively thing, yeah, maybe. So they get to a planet, and there's like a beacon thing that was going off, which to me, if the person wasn't alive, this beacon should go off, but it just constantly kept going. And so they get there, and there's like this big water thing. So they're like, oh, shit, this planet isn't great. So they have to go back. And it's been like 23 years. And this is just kind of where like the acting seemed to get really bad. Like there's points where I'm like laughing at it because it's just seemed like very.
Like all of a sudden the acting shifted, like it turned into like what, like kind of just like wooden.
Yeah, well, it's like the beginning of it's like okay, like they're doing this thing and this plot makes sense.
All right.
And then it seems like at this point everybody's like this doesn't make much sense. Like they wrote themselves in all these corners, and they just used the thought of like, well, this is unknown, so we can do whatever we want.
Okay.
Because then there's this big argument of like love and. You want to go here because you're in love with this guy, but this other guy is he's giving us better readings. So they go to this second planet, and the guy had been there on his own, and it ends up being Matt Damon.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and his acting was really sour. And so, and this is like 2.5 hours into the movie, so this is the point where I'm like,
how long is this movie?
It's close to 3 hours.
Okay. So they go to this. So they go to this other planet, or they go through this wormhole and they see these 3 planets, and on one of these planets is Matt Damon.
Yep, Matt Damon's on one of them.
So
they go to the first planet, and because they tried to time everything right that they'd have enough fuel, but they got stuck on the one planet for longer than they wanted to.
Okay.
So when they got back to their main ship, it had been 23 years, so they were really low on fuel. So it's like, well, we can only go to this planet or this planet.
All right.
And of course, this is where they throw in like the one girl's in love with somebody on the one planet. That's why she wants to go there. But the other guy's been giving him better readings, so that's the one we should go to.
Okay.
They vote on it, and they say, okay, well, let's go to the one with the better readings. And of course, the whole planet's frozen. And so they get him, and he's been like locked into his like a chamber thing where he sleeps.
Okay.
And he gets out. And he's like, oh, well, in the core, it's like it's better. We've got better readings. But it ends up being that he did all this because he didn't want to be left on the planet to die alone, which kind of makes sense. But then there's this really awkward fight between Matt Damon and Matthew McConaughey.
Okay.
And he pushes him down.
Like why is it awkward?
Well, because they're both in their spacesuits.
Oh, okay.
And so they're kind of wrestling around.
So it's like like girl slapping.
Yeah, kind of. And gravity's a little bit lighter, so they're kind of floating around.
Stop it.
And there's a part where Matthew McConaughey has him pinned down, and I don't remember what he says, but Matt Damon like tries to headbutt him. They both have like their space helmets on, and so he hits him, and Matthew McConaughey's like, "Oh, if you do this, you have a 50% chance of dying." And Matt Damon's like, "I have had worse odds," and then starts just headbutting him and breaks his glass.
Nice.
He does this like awkward walking away, and it's like it's just very bad acting. He keeps looking, he's like, "Oh, are you thinking about your kids? That's what you're gonna think about near your death is your kids." He's like, "Oh, I can't watch, and turns around, starts walking away, and he's like, "I'm so sorry for this. Oh, I can't watch. And so he ends up, of course, living, and he radios back to his friends that are things like, "Hey, I need help," blah blah blah.
All
And
right.
one of the guy dies from an explosion, and Matt Damon tries to take over their ship, but he fucks it up and he dies. I'm like, okay, this is getting progressively worse, but all right, let's go with this. The thing that like really made me check out, so the scientist I talked about earlier, who was trying to deal with gravity and figure it out,
Right.
he had apparently figured this equation out like before he sent all these people off on this trip. And so there's this really awkward conversation between Matthew McConaughey's daughter, who's now like 23, 33, something like that,
Okay.
and the doctor. Like he's dying on his deathbed. It's almost like they made him into this like evil character at this point.
So the doctor's actually a bad guy, and he figured out this calculation before he sent everybody off. What was the point?
Well, I mean, it comes from a good place because his thought was if we tell people, because he didn't think that getting everybody to this new planet was feasible.
Okay.
So his thought was the plan B that they'd have to find the most habitable planet and then use the fertilized eggs to repopulate or keep humans from going extinct.
Okay.
And so his thought was if we tell people that that's the only option, then nobody's going to work together because there's no hope for living. Which kind of makes sense, but they brought it out in a really weird way.
So basically, he's saying that regardless of the outcome of the venture, they should still do the venture, so that way they're hopeful. So that way it gives hope to the huddled masses.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes sense.
Okay, I get that.
But it just came out in a really weird way. Oh, so and at this point, so you have this, and this is like where like the music gets like very like Friday the 13th for some reason.
Oh shit.
And like it just like it starts like right before the doctor gives his big explanation, and then it's just this weird music for the rest of the movie. So they decide on trying to get back, and they're going to go over this black hole that they were circling. And Matthew McConaughey like is going to sacrifice himself. And like this is one of the points where I'm like, okay, this is the end of the movie.
It's
He'll
like an
sacrifice
Armageddon
himself.
moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But he gets over the black hole, releases into it, and starts bouncing around in it. You're like, okay, this is going to be like a peaceful death.
All right.
No. All of a sudden, he's bouncing around, and he kind of like is floating in this like weird, like looks like strings all over the place, and he's still alive. And as he looks through him, he sees his daughter at a young age in her room, and he's like trying to talk to her and all this stuff. And he's seen the past where he came and saw her and told her that he was doing this, space exploration thing. And he finds out that he can communicate with her. And what you end up finding out is this whole time how they figured out the coordinates. And there's a part where she says that the Morse code said stay. It all came from him in this like black hole thing that at the end he says humans created.
So Matthew McConaughey sets the wheels in motion for the trip that puts him where he sets the wheels in motion.
Yeah. It's very like, it felt like somebody was trying to like outthink the room. It's like, what'll be cool? He was the one that started this whole thing.
So it's kind of like Prometheus.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well then never mind. Actually, Prometheus wasn't bad, but it's kind of that same thing. It's like it's that whole what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of argument.
Yeah. It was just, and I don't really know how I feel about that stuff. It seems like it's a way to be like, oh, well, no, it makes sense because, he's the one that said it from the future.
Yeah.
Because he was the one that said stay, and it's like, listen, you know that didn't work.
This totally seems like something that Christopher Nolan would do. Because I know you haven't seen Inception, but Inception is that whole, it's that whole same kind of thing where it's like, ooh, mind fuck. I'm gonna mind fuck.
And it's like, it's not really a mind fuck. And so all that happens, and all of a sudden the black hole starts closing on him, and it sends him like a shit ton into the future. And so he gets to see his dying daughter, who's like 120 some years old, or 100, 90 years old. And he's 120, but he's the same age. And it was rough. It was very rough. You just walk in there and it feels like somebody was like just really trying to outthink the room.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sounds like Christopher Nolan. Like I said, I know you haven't seen Inception, but Inception was kind of the same thing. I mean, it was done very cool, and I mean, like visually, it looks stunning, and I mean the plot the plot was kind of there. I mean, it has its holes and stuff like that, and it has its moments where it's like, ooh, where it seems
Yeah.
like you almost want him to like look in the camera and be like, what? But
You would get it if you were smarter.
right. But I mean, I don't know. So does this make Christopher Nolan like the M. Night Shyamalan of today?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it, except like M. Night Shyamalan, his movies weren't as like visually like, what's the dude that does all the explosions? Michael Bay. They're not really Michael Bay kind of movies. They're very like, just people oriented.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like Christopher Nolan's are very Michael Bay-ish. It's like these big, fancy, amazing shots of like space travel or, in dream inception type stuff.
Right.
And I always feel like it's like you have to hit both. Like if I go to a movie and it's visually like beautiful, it's like, all right, but if the plot's not there, then I check out. Like we see all these beautiful things all the time. TV's getting to the point where we can see these beautiful things. I want a good story and a good plot.
Yeah. I think, and I think that's what I gravitate towards. Like to me, I don't look it's so weird. I don't look at when I look at shows now, I look at the writing staff. I look at who the writer is, and then I'm like, that's what I'll latch on to. Aaron Sorkin, I fucking like. I'm a closet West Wing junkie. I loved that fucking show. And so I went and looked at his other shows. He did one called 30 Rock.
Okay.
Or no, not 30 Rock. He didn't do 30 Rock.
It's the NBC show.
It was on NBC. It was called, I think it was like something on the Sunset Strip. It didn't last very long. It was only, I think it only went for a season. I watched that. That was really good. But then he went on and did The Newsroom on HBO.
Oh, I've heard that's really good.
It is so good. You see the very first 5 minutes or something of the very first episode of The Newsroom. You can see that thing all over YouTube, and like I've seen like people post it all the time. It's that whole where Jeff Daniels is sitting in a chair and someone asks him, why America is the greatest country in the world. And he says that it's not the greatest country in the world to this, to this audience of college kids, and they're all just get like slack jawed.
Huh. That sounds amazing.
I'll tell you. I'll find the clip and I'll post it on Facebook. It's really. Based on those 3 minutes of footage, it made me want to watch the show, and then I started watching the show, and I fell in love with the show. Great fucking show on HBO, The Newsroom, and they're in their last few episodes of it now, like they just started, not the beginning of November, so good, really good show.
Yeah, it's always funny. Like, just recently, somebody was talking about Interstellar too. Like, I don't know if you've had these situations, but he's like, oh, I went and saw Interstellar, and I was about to be like, oh my God, I hated that movie. But before I could get that out, he's like, it was a great movie. This is one of my favorite movies probably ever.
And then you're like, you know what a great movie is? Waiting.
Kitchen, bring it around.
Yeah.
Order up. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to add before I do a little housekeeping?
No. I was trying to think of something clever and witty, and I got nothing.
Alrighty. Well, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at languageofbro. Go ahead and email us at languageofbromance@gmail.com. Our website is languageofbromance.com. And always, of course, like us on Facebook and leave us a comment and subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher.
And make sure to check us out on the Pod Bros Network.
Pod Bros.
Do.
All right. Was there anything else you want to add before we close it out?
Shit. No, because I didn't think of anything new in that time.
All right. Well, that's all the bromance we have for this show. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Richard.
And I say we eat the beaver.
That's served to you by probably an immigrant.
All right.